Junkies.
What's going on, golf addicts? Welcome to the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. It is Tuesday, September 12th. And guess what? There's another PGA Tour event this week. The Fortinet Championship kicks off the fall segment here. There's a little bit of a change up. We are in this transitional period on the PGA Tour as we switch the calendar schedule in January. We're going to talk through the details of that here in just a second. It's also week 2 of the NFL. It's week 3 of college football. We're going to have Geoff Ulrich on the show today. He is a contributor on Fantasy Life as well as DraftKings, DK Nation, all that good stuff. Jeff's been doing it for a long time, both in the PGA DFS as well as NFL DFS and gambling stuff. So we're going to talk to Jeff about literally all things NFL and PGA Tour. So I'm pumped about that. Pat, how we doing today? You good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Doing great. Glad that, we're getting started back at Fortinet. And you know what? I am a wine lover, right, DB? Mm-hmm. So we're in Napa this week. Very excited to be up there. I've driven by Silverado Golf Course before, but I had several glasses of wine, so I don't really remember it. But anyway,
yeah. What would be, you are the fantasy golf sommelier, and you've done enough fantasy golf sommelier episodes. That I know you have something, but like if you had to give somebody just a noob, a wine noob, some sort of a tip, some sort of maybe even a wine misconception, what would your go-to?
Well, what my go-to would be.
What? No, I do not.
That rosé, which is one of my favorite wines, everyone thinks of it like it is a Sutter Home, pink Zinfandel, and that is not what a rosé is. It's not necessarily a sweet, sugary sweet wine. It is. You can get a dry rosé. Actually, a rosé. Here's a little tip for you. Is it's really just a peeled red grape. So typically when you have a red wine, they don't peel the grapes, they just crush them as they are. Well, a rosé is actually the same thing. That's why you can have rosé of Pinot Noir. So if you like a Pinot Noir, actually it's the same thing. It's just peeled. So it's not, it's not what you think it is. Now, by peeling the skin, it does take out some of the tannins that you might have in a red wine.
Yeah.
Okay. But you know about the tannins, don't you? Yeah. But anyway, so that's one thing, is that rosé is not necessarily a sugary sweet, pink Zinfandel that the ladies like to drink.
Pat has been single-handedly trying to remove all beta stereotypes of rosé.
Yes. And you just gave me a good opportunity for that.
I teed you up for that. I'm glad you did. Way to go. You hit it out of the park. And that's all the wine discussion we're going to have for today. But they are in wine country at the Fortinet. We're going to talk about, we're going to handicap it a little bit. We're obviously going to do our cash game lineup. We're back to doing a cash game lineup on DK at the end of the show. So stick around for that. We're going to, handicap it a little bit, talk through a few things. But I think the first thing, Pat, we got to talk about is this transitional season that we're in on the PGA Tour, because it is a weird year. Normally, everything ends at with the Tour Championship. We get a couple of weeks, and then the new season technically starts with this tournament. And that new season runs from this tournament in September through the Tour Championship the following year in August. But now we are going to go back to the calendar year schedule on the PGA Tour, which I think we did prior to 2012. I can't remember the exact year, but we did that prior. Now we're going to go back to it, starting with the 2024 season. So I'm pumped about that. First of all, I'm excited about that. We're going to have a definitive starting point to the year in January, and it is going to end, I'm guessing, sometime in the fall. Those details have not been released yet. So that means what's happening now in the middle. Plus, you had the restructuring of the FedEx Cup point system and the playoffs and all that stuff. So now what's happening? And there's a really good article that came out on the PGA Tour kind of explaining some of the basics, and I'll try to hit the highlights. First of all, we need to know this. If you win a fall event, you get these same benefits as if you were to win any other event, which is a 2-year exemption, 500 FedEx Cup points, a spot in the Players, a spot in the Century, and major championships that do invite PGA Tour winners. So you do get that. But the FedEx, they're calling it the FedEx Cup Fall, is when the top 125 in the standings get to improve on some things. Well, most of them get to improve on some things. After the conclusion of the playoffs, which has already happened, players ranked 51st and beyond, okay, so you're 51 through like probably 200 category, will continue to compete for points this fall. They will begin the fall with all the points they've already earned in the regular season, as well as the first FedEx Cup playoff event if they made it into that. So your guys 51 to 70 who played in the FedEx St. Jude, they will also keep those points. Everyone else will keep their points earned up until the playoffs because they didn't make it. Additionally, the top 10 players on the FedEx Cup points list at the conclusion of the FedEx Cup Fall, so in November, who are not already eligible for the signature events next year, will then be eligible for 2 signature events next year and the season opener at the Century, which is now not the Century Tournament of Champions. It's kind of the Century of Champions and other good people. I think that's the technical term. Okay. So that's gonna allow for the trending players at the end of this fall segment to get into those 2 signature events and the Century. So are you with me so far? Pat, are you with me so far?
I'm kind of with you, but only because I'm reading along.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about this. Players number 71 and beyond can earn spots in signature events, but they are also competing to improve their top 125 standing for the FedEx Cup. That's what's happening this fall. That's what they're doing. At the end of the FedEx Cup, those that rank 126 to 150 in the final standings will not have full status, but they will have conditional status. So that's normally what we're used to seeing happen right at the end of the season, like after the Wyndham's over. Okay, now that's being advanced to kind of the end of the fall segment. All players outside of the top 125 can improve or regain full status either through Q School on the Korn Ferry Tour or through exemptions and other events. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
What are your questions? What are our questions? Should we process this together?
I'm processing it now by trying to figure out who needs to do work in the fall. That's really how I'm processing this, because there's so many different things that you're talking about here, different categories. You know, if you end up improving your status, you can make it into maybe a couple elevated or signature events, but not all of them. So there is a way to get into some of the signature events in the fall. But I'm really just trying to figure out, okay, who people that need to do work.
Okay, well, first of all, this is something I didn't mention. Players that are already in the top 50 cannot improve or lose their FedEx Cup standing status for this end of the year that sets them up for next year. So that's all set. So in other words, Max Homa, who finished in the top 10, he's playing this week at the Fortinet. He's your back-to-back defending champion going for the three-peat. If he wins, he does not get FedEx Cup points. He gets money, but he does not get FedEx Cup points if he's in the top 50. That would apply to other players also inside the top 50 here, like Cam Davis, Brendan Todd, Eric Cole. Who else is in this field? Andrew Putnam, Sahith Thagala. And that looks like that is it.
So an interesting thing that when you go to the PGA Tour site, when you go to the FedEx standings, basically they list 1 through 50, but they don't have numbers by them. The numbers don't start until 51.
Yeah.
And then you get to see kind of who's, where we are here. But they just go ahead and take the top 50 so that they don't even, you can see they're not even going to accrue any points, basically.
Right. So I think to go back to your question on who needs to play well. I mean, obviously all of them could afford to play well, right? I think just like we see at the end of the season, there's certain break points though where guys are really trying to stay within or near. So I think being in that 50, 51 through 70 number is going to be good. And then there's kind of a no man's land, I think. But that 125 number is going to be really important.
Yeah.
It's just we're used to seeing it at the Wyndham, and now we're going to see it all culminate at like the RSM. So there's 7 events in the fall where they can earn points. Obviously, the Ryder Cup is not included because none of these guys, hardly any of these guys, are going to play in the Ryder Cup except for Homa and JT. But also, there's like that one December event, and I think Tiger's event doesn't count. There's 7 events in the fall, starting here with the Fortinet, that they can earn points. So you got 7 events if you're on that bubble, that 125 bubble, that you're really paying attention.
So, yeah. So then let's talk about some names here, some bigger names that are in this area that you're talking about. For instance, okay, the big name lately this fall, Ludwig Aber. He's at 135. Now, I feel like, is that real? Like, I mean, it says he's 135, but is he going to get some kind of special points anyway to get in? Because, like, there's no way he's not going to be on the bubble, or they're going to make him go to Q school.
Listen, the whole PGA Tour qualification and like points and status puzzle is a complex puzzle.
Yeah.
I can't begin to understand all of it. I think, could be wrong here, I think he's fully exempt because of the what's the PGA Tour college thing?
The college thing. You're right.
Is it local not local like you?
He got a full exemption on the So then he's kind of thrown out. Willie Z is in here at 138.
He's going to be on a medical. Yeah,
he's going to be on a medical. So there are some big names up here that I just don't feel like this applies to.
Aaron Wise will be on a medical.
Aaron Wise is another one. But there are a few in here like Webb Simpson. He has no medical. He's at 136. He could be a name that's got to do work. Charlie Hoffman needs to do work in the fall.
Yeah,
I think.
I mean, he'll have so many like past champions and lifetime earnings exemptions. We're not getting rid of Charlie Hoffman anytime soon completely.
No,
I think it means a lot for a guy like Harry Higgs, who could be on the Korn Ferry Tour after this fall if he doesn't make it back. He's a fan favorite. I think Scott Stallings is probably looking at that, wanting to get inside of it. He's at 128. Our friend Austin Smotherman, friend of the Tour Junkies, right there at the 125 bubble.
Yeah. And Luke List, 119.
I'm guessing
he does have some past champion status with his victory.
And does that, I guess, has that exemption, the 2-year exemption from the victory, run out? I wonder. It feels like it's been at least 2 years, right? I think it has been.
Yeah, well, I think it will be 2 years from in February.
Yeah. A lot of these guys are probably going to get, if they get off to good starts and in the first few events, I would imagine they're looking good. They're in good shape. I would imagine you would see some of these guys kind of take some time off again and get to the vacation spots early this fall and winter. But there are some names in here. I mean, Taylor Pendrith coming off the hip surgery, I think it was, or back surgery, kind of played well at the end of the year. He's at 114. He's a guy with a lot of talent. Doug Gim had a solid year. He's at 117. He's got to do something. Carson Young, who, showed up a little bit, 111. Christian Bezadenhout, Seabez, is at 109. Grayson Sigg, our resident Augusta boy, is at 106. He needs to keep it going. So
hey, Mav, you didn't even mention Mav. He's your
Mav's
guy.
got that. He's going to have some medical exemptions too.
I forgot. He's kind of been. See, that's the thing is, like, why don't they do like fantasy football where, like you got like a little red cross by your name?
Yeah.
Why can't they put a red cross by Mav? Like I may have forgotten about his and it says, like, you click the red, just hover over the red cross, and it says medical exemption 10 events in 2024 or something.
Yeah,
like
that would be nice. The other thing we didn't talk about.
I'll suggest that to the tour.
Send that. Put that in the comment box. Another thing we didn't talk about is we're also used to this time of year being when we get our normal injection of Korn Ferry Tour graduates, PGA Tour rookies coming over, usually 25 to 50 guys, or 50 guys, most of which we usually have not seen before or haven't seen much of. But that whole thing's kind of got turned upside down too. So those guys won't be injected into everything until January, I believe. And there will be some, and there are some even in this field who are getting sponsors exemptions. Because of their performance on the Korn Ferry Tour or whatever it is, whatever their relationship may be to that tournament. So there's some in there, but we're not getting that usual crop of fresh meat. You know what I mean? So we got a lot of old meat, a lot of kind of, it's the sell by date is coming up. and we kind of know what we're getting, but we're getting it at we're getting it at a discount.
Yeah.
You got to put up with it for the fall and see what's up. Guys like Charlie Hoffman, But let's talk about the odds of hitting a bomb in the fall, Pat, because I do think that's probably a better. I think that's a more likely outcome this season than maybe ever before. And the fall is usually a very nice time to have long shot season. I mean, we coined long shot season as the fall a couple of years ago, hitting a 250 to 1 winner, hitting 150 to 1 winner. But I think with a lot of these top 50 guys not playing most events, they might play 1 or 2 here and there. I think with the top end of the field, not these fields for these 7 events not being very strong, it's going to allow for some serious long shots to take down these tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're exactly right. Not having some of the top players in here who don't need to get like a head start on the points like they used to try to do.
Yep.
So they won't be playing in several of these events. I agree. I mean, now this week you get a home and a JT, but outside of that, it drops straight down to 20 to 1 on the odds. So I think you definitely are going to get some more opportunities at long shots. Now, I don't think that, we had the opportunity, like you mentioned with Corn Ferry guys, you had those guys that could come in that could kind of surprise you, like in DFS, the names that nobody may have heard that we've talked about or we know because we follow this all the time. But I don't think they're going to be guys that, as I like to say, are sneaky. These are the same olds we've been dealing with all PGA Tour season long, but it's going to give them an opportunity to win. And you definitely could get, some guys around 100 to 1, maybe even who knows, a 250 to 1 long shot. Hey, Kiz is in the field.
He's 300 to 1.
300 to 1. I saw him last week. I talked to him. I said, you're probably going to be 300 to 1. He said, well, it's probably about right. And then I asked him how he was playing. He was like, I don't know. So he didn't really give me much.
Probably wouldn't bet Kiss.
But I do think there's certainly that potential for that in the fall.
Yeah. There was a quote in one of the PGA Tour articles that came out recently that said you could make the argument that the fall schedule has been the springboard for Max Homa en route to his new star status and his new odds outlook. I mean, Max Homa, like I said, your defending champ, has won here the last 2 years in a row. We all know how he's vaulted into stardom on the PGA Tour, and a lot of it started with winning the Fortinet. His victory at the 2021 Fortinet saw him with 50 to 1 pre-tournament odds. Later that season, he then won the Wells Fargo. Then when he returned to Napa in 2022, he defended his title again down to 14 to 1. He is plus 750 this week. Max Homa is your favorite. Now, before we get into that, which we'll get into in probably with Geoff and then in the last segment, thinking about a guy like Max Homa, who maybe he's just not on anybody's radar. He's not really done much of anything, but he just needs that breakthrough top 10 to get him going or something like that. Or maybe he's not won yet on the PGA Tour. But thinking about who could be that Max Homa to springboard his career here in the fall season. Because a lot of times, man, that's the thing about golf. And the more guys that we talk to in this sport, the more pros, the more caddies, the more coaches we talk to, the more we understand that, like, so much of this is confidence. So much of this is confidence in your ability in knowing and believing that you're supposed to be here on the PGA Tour. And these guys, and golf is such a brutal game mentally. You get beat down all the time. You lose every single week, just about. Even the best lose all the time. And after a while, when these guys who are so used to winning, they win in high school, they win in college, they may win in mini golf, they may win on junior or mini tours, not mini golf. They may win in mini golf, but mini tours.
They might. They could.
They may win on the Latin America or the Canadian Tour or the Corn Ferry Tour, and then they get to the big boy, the major leagues, and they all of a sudden now they can't win, and they've gone a year, they've gone 2 years, they've gone 5 years, whatever it may be. The confidence that they lack is the only missing piece from taking them to a kind of average, middle of the road, 80th, 100th ranked player in the world to potentially a top 20 player in the world. Seriously, there's just that razor thin of a margin, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think even in our own games, golf
Yeah,
is a lot about confidence. I mean, you can lose it pretty quickly, as these guys can. So I think, and when you get these chances like they're going to have this fall, with a less, like the strength of field just isn't where it is typically on the tour. They got a chance to have a breakthrough win. There's a couple guys in this field that I think we could see have a breakthrough win and really springboard their
that's what I was going to
careers.
ask you. Who is that for you as you're looking at it?
I mean, there's really two guys right off the bat that I think we could look at. One is Sahith Theegala, who's knocked on the door several times, has not won. Did play well in this tournament last year too. I think he's one that has all the talent in the world. Everybody's talked about him. He's been out there. He's got the experience. Yeah. It's time for him to win. Okay. Eric Cole's another one. Eric Cole's played fantastic on tour all season long. I mean, it was just literally like, if you're playing DFS, especially cash, you just plug him in and he's probably gonna return value, if not have some upside. But he had a chance to win early in the season, but he didn't get it done. And that was really the first time he had a real shot to win. Very consistent though, great putter, great ball striker. I think Eric Cole and Sahith are the two that jump out to me immediately. And those are the ones that I'm looking at to kind of have a good fall.
I think the biggest one for me is at 74 in the standings right now, and it's Austin Eckroat, who we saw have a stint of 5 or 6 tournaments where he looked like, oh my God, this kid is about to show up. He's about to hello world, right? His ball striking was absolutely fantastic. He was having high finishes. But when you start to look back at his pedigree, okay, highly recruited, goes and plays golf at Oklahoma State, arguably the #1 golf program in the country, that produced Matt Wolff, that produced Victor Hovland, that's produced Fowler.
Yeah. And Victor would tell you, I think Hovland has even said Eckroat is one of the most impressive golfers that he plays with on a regular basis.
Exactly. That was going to be my next point. Like, we hear Eckroat still lives out there in I think Oklahoma City and plays. Is it Oklahoma City? Where? I don't remember. He plays right out there at Oklahoma State's home course.
Yeah, the Carson Creek. Whatever. Which is supposed to be
and plays regularly with Victor and with his buddies. Matt Wolff's his best buddy. Like, we've interviewed Eckroat, and we hear stories that, like, he constantly is kicking everybody's ass at that club, including Victor Hovland, Matt Wolff. He's got a ton of game. I think the short game is what held him back a lot this year. It was a little erratic. So he goes on that little run, late summer, and then he has the last 4 or 5 events of his season were pretty terrible. And that's what kept him out of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how he shows up here after some time off, probably got in the lab, kind of gets to come into this as maybe feeling like somewhat of an underdog, but also kind of feeling like, hey, this is my chance to kind of, maybe I'm a bigger fish in the little pond here, and I'm going to go eat. I'm going to go tear some stuff up. I think Eckroat is one to watch for the fall. I could see him taking a leap, and if he doesn't, I'll be surprised and I'll be disappointed, because I want to pull for the guy. He's a good dude.
I agree. I think one more I would add real quick, because there's a lot of names in here that they've had their chances, and they'll continue to play on tour, and they'll be good players. But if we're talking about just next kind of studs and stars that can break through, I think Sam Stevens is another one. He's another guy that had a great year last year, a lot of top 10 finishes. I think a second and a third, really back to back, right around like the Corrales and I think Valero Texas Open. He was right there in the top 5. So Sam Stevens is another one that I'm looking forward to have a pretty good fall.
Love it. All right, that's enough of that. Kind of sets the table for the fall segment. We're going to take a break. When we come back, our buddy Geoff Ulrich from Fantasy Life and DraftKings. We're going to come back, talk to him a little bit more about golf, about the Fortinet, about the fall season, as well as NFL Week 2. And then we'll wrap up with our own picks, a few picks, and our DraftKings cash lineup. So stay right here on the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network.
Let's go to the running back report right now and talk a little bit about Christian McCaffrey here. That the Niners are going to take Christian McCaffrey off the field more than the Panthers did. And I think it was a Niners coach or maybe it was a Niners beat writer, Graziano himself, talked about like this could be an epic 1,000-yard season. And I'm scratching my head like, how does this work if he's going to be playing less, but he's putting up better numbers? Where's the disconnect in here?
The answer actually came out on draftsharks.com earlier this year because I wrote the early round bust article. And now that the season's starting, I'll go ahead and reveal that it was Christian McCaffrey.
How about that? Early round bust, first round bust, Christian McCaffrey this year. Matt, enlighten us on why he is Draft Sharks' first round bust.
This is the first reason, what we're talking about right here, because the Niners, for the first time in his career, have reason to not overwork him. The reason that Christian McCaffrey was so dominant in Carolina was because he was the offense. He was the leading receiver and the leading running back. He got a ton of touches, and he delivered with them. We already saw him in San Francisco get fewer touches than what he got in Carolina. He had his fewest receptions. He had fewer receptions per game last year for the Niners than he did for the Panthers. He had fewer touches when Elijah Mitchell was on the field. He had fewer touches when Deebo Samuel was on the field. They just have a lot of guys to give the ball to, and they have every reason to lighten his load a bit. And I'm not saying that that's going to make Christian McCaffrey stink, but if we need to take a guy in the first half of round one, we need a dominant running back, especially a running back, because he's one of the few running backs up there. He has to be a whole lot different than the running backs that we can get in round two. And I just think that the work he's going to get is not a whole lot different than what Tony Pollard's going to get, and not enough different versus the other guys behind them. And then there is that bit of injury risk. We have the injury predictor on Draft Sharks, and it does show he's not atop the position in injury risk, and Austin Eckler is up there as well, but it is above an 80% chance that he misses some time. We have him projected to miss 2.2 games for the season. So it's just, when you get more touches, I guess if he beats that first concern of ours and does get more touches than we're expecting, what he also does is increase the chance that he gets hurt, because that's just a fact. The more you touch the ball, the more likely you are to get hurt. So just when you combine all of that with the price of where you have to take him in the first half of round one, amid this, land of high target wide receivers, there's bust potential to him.
Making you money in daily fantasy sports and golf betting. Tour Junkies on Better Sports Network.
Listen, week one in the NFL is over, and your fantasy team is fucked. Don't worry, though, because the good folks over at Fantasy Alarm are here for you, and they're here to get your team back on track. From waiver wire picks to advice on who to start in week two, it's all over there on fantasyalarm.com. You can start a free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get all the week 2 DFS content and the picks for free. Head over to fantasyalarm.com/NFL. Pat, is your fantasy team already?
It's kind of indirectly. It's indirectly because the big news was Aaron Rodgers last night, and I was a big Garrett Wilson fan. I still am. He made just a spectacular catch last night, but I do think it's going to hurt his status for the year. Now, he was pretty damn good with all the different quarterbacks he seemed to have last year, but I feel like he was really in for a great year with Rodgers. So it's indirectly.
More into football here in just a moment with our guest that I want to bring in right now, Mr. Geoff Ulrich, who is a contributor over there on Fantasy Life, as well as DraftKings, DK Network, all the good stuff. Geoff Ulrich, the fantasy grind. What's up, dude?
What's up, guys? Yeah, no, not too much. Obviously, just recovering from week one, the panic attacks, like you said, that is happening in the fantasy football world and stuff. But ready to get into the fall series of golf too, man. For betting, like, the fall series has generally been pretty good to me. So it's always a good time to keep an eye on golf too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we ended the last segment talking about, and I want to throw it out to you and maybe get your thoughts. If you look at the FedEx Cup standings, or just thinking about the guys who are going to see regularly here in the fall, from say 71 to 125 in the standings, or 150 in the standings, right? We don't have this normal influx of Korn Ferry Tour graduates, PJ Tour rookies coming, but we still know that the fall can be a springboard for somebody's career, like Max Homa winning the Fortinet, going on to win the Wells Fargo, going on to win the Fortinet again. And it could be a guy who's been on tour for a while, but just hasn't gotten across the finish line, or it could be a guy who, we just feel like is going to level up. When you look at the list of names here playing in the fall that we're going to see regularly, is there a name or two that pops out to you that you just think, man, like, the talent has got to be there, and maybe playing in these weaker fields that we'll see in the fall with less of the top tier names, at the top of the leaderboard? maybe it gives them what they need to get across the finish line. And then we know that just, confidence is right around the corner and these guys can go do anything in compete against anybody. Who would be a couple names or maybe a name that you look at there for the fall?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's a good point, right? I mean, this is when we see sometimes journeymen just grabbing victories or something like that, like a guy like Tyler Duncan, and we don't hear from him again. But other times, like it is like a Max Homer, right? Who's like, grabs kind of like a signature victory. I mean, I'll never forget him just stealing the soul of Maverick McNeely on the back nine there and wrecking my McNeely bet. So that was really fun to watch. It was shot like a 7 under, but anyways, I mean, Sahith Theegala is well overdue for a win. I don't know about Sahith this week. His numbers down to plus 15, 1600, but certainly at some point, like this guy's going to break through. And I think when he does, more good things will happen. I would say, like, for me, it's Cam Davis. I know Cam Davis has won before on tour, but I just look at Cam Davis as a player who's got everything, like the total package. His short game is better than people think. He's actually not a bad mid-range putter. I almost put him in that group of Wyndham Clarkish type players where he's got power off the tee. He can get hot with the putter. His irons are fantastic already. He's younger than Wyndham Clark, right? So maybe it's going to take longer, but like if Cameron Davis comes out, maybe wins this week, maybe wins another week, it really wouldn't shock me if that vaulted him to like a better season. So he's really like the main player, especially in the field this week, that I'd have my eye on. But I mean, a guy like Justin Suh, I figure he had a really nice year. He's a really high end putter. I still think there's consistency issues with the rest of his game, but he's coming along. And at some point, I think it will come together for him too.
Yeah, 100%. I think a guy like Eric Cole, we saw not win during the season, but really had just a great solid season. And I'm totally with you on Sahith. I just feel like it's time for Sahith to win. DB and I also talked about this is kind of long shot season is what we're going to see typically in the fall, especially with guys that, without having a Rory in the field or, some of those top guys that don't have to get a head start on the points going into next year. So who are some guys you may have, maybe not just this week, but maybe in general that you think are kind of long shot plays that you've kind of been eyeing in the fall that you think could maybe sneak up and get a victory?
Yeah. I mean, well, we'll start with a couple guys I like this week. I mean, again, it's the fall season, you can get these like breakout winners, Sung Jae came in and grabbed a win. I think it was last year at the Shriners, but and we've seen Homa win this event before, but I'm going like to kind of mid-range here with a veteran in Kevin Streelman. I actually really like Streelman this week. He's plus 5,500, kind of widely available around that number anyways. And I mean, you look at this event and we've seen guys like Griot win, we've seen Stuart Sink one here. And it's just really consistent ball strikers. Doesn't necessarily have to be like bombers off the tee, but the fairways here are hard to hit. Streelman was really consistent ball striking coming down the stretch. And I think it just kind of fits that mold of a Griot or a Sink who can just come in here and potentially just hit a bunch of fairways and just sneak up on this field if his putter gets hot enough. So that was one name I really had my eye on. I mentioned Cam Davis at the top. I really do not hate going with him if he can get plus 2,000 or better. I just think that this field is so weak. Outside of Homa and Justin Thomas, we just don't even know at this point what he's going to bring. So I don't mind him, but further back, a guy like Grayson Sigg, another player who's pretty strong off the tee. I think he fits the profile pretty good here. I'd probably rather take Sigg in like a top 40 or top 20, but Streelman was really that kind of like plus 5,000 or bigger player that I really have my eye on. There's other names down here that, I mean, certainly we can talk about, but, Streelman was kind of like the name that pops the most for me. Him and Doug Gim is another one who's just very consistent off the tee, going to hit a ton of greens. Those two guys in the plus 5,000 range for me are really where I want to start, kind of betting.
You're right. I kind of forgot about like the fall also being one of those times where we can get this random, old fart win or, the guy that hasn't won in a long time. Even Keegan, winning last year. I think
should we be looking at Kuchar?
Cooch.
Right?
I mean, Charlie Hoffman is kind of surging a little bit. Ball striking's come back a little bit.
I like that name. Yeah, Charlie Hoffman
loves Poa. Yeah. So, well, in terms of Silverado, I mean, this is obviously a course we're all pretty familiar with. I mean, Geoff, you've been doing this a long time too. How long have you been
True.
doing the DFS golf thing?
And I mean, 7 or 8 years now. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, when I started off, it was more part-time, but yeah, full-time kind of like probably 7 years. So, I mean, yeah, very familiar.
Yeah.
This course has been around for a bit. I think the first year I did it, it might've been new to this event, but yeah, we've seen it a bit now. It's scoreable. It's got tighter fairways, and the POA. So it's kind of one of those West Coast specialist things, which again, I think speaks to Streelman, guy who pops up a lot at Pebble Beach and the Farmers.
Yeah. I also was going to ask you in terms of Silverado, anything like, is there anything, and the answer may be no. Is there anything you found in your research or in your modeling or whatever it may be that you think stands out more than you would think at Silverado, or some kind of key indicator for you that you really like to pay close attention to?
I mean, I think for me, like, again, it's really come down to, like, you don't have to be a power player necessarily, but it's just the overall ball striking. I mean, it's just like hitting fairways here, because the field misses more fairways, which,
yeah,
again, like we've seen Cameron Champ win, obviously. So, and Max Homa was pretty strong off the tee, but I think it's just more that combo of like, can you be consistent enough to hit a bunch of fairways? And obviously length does help. So it's not like you want to avoid power players here. Certainly we've seen a number of them win, but to me, this is one of those ones where emphasizing off the tee is definitely something where I take a stronger look at, like, strokes gained off the tee, fairways gained. Around the green doesn't necessarily factor in as much. And then, the putting, again, certainly, with a guy like Homa, who's won multiple times on the West Coast, I think looking at players who've had historically good POA splits is definitely something to look at too. Trying to think of other players might fit in that bundle who've won here, but Brendan Steele, probably another one. But Streelman, he's had top fives. So again, always when you're on the West Coast, it's a real specialist kind of circuit we got. And I think just looking at historical, splits or results from those players is always key.
Are you into any narratives in Napa? Because, when they're in Vegas, everybody's always worried about the people that are up on the tables late.
Right.
I mean, there could be. I mean, are you worried about anybody having a little too much red wine, or do you you don't really care about that? That's not part of your model.
I mean, I'll be dead honest. In terms of like the wine connoisseurs on the PGA Tour, I am at a knowledge disadvantage, because that is not something that I track necessarily. I would think that maybe the older guys have like a little bit more appreciation for this event. They get a little bit looser. I mean, we have seen Sink win, like you said. So maybe that's something to look into. But I mean, it's, I think it's just like that West Coast thing. Like it almost doesn't matter where we are. It's just like some guys just like the West Coast. And
they do.
And I do think that is something to key in on. So
yeah,
this is a pretty low key event. I think some people probably enjoy coming out here more than others do. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, we're not into the West Coast swing, but it's definitely like I consider it kind of like just a part of that big bag of players who will come over here. Either they live here, they grew up here, like Justin says, another one, played a lot of West Coast golf. And I think it just gives them a slight edge over players who just don't come to this part of the country as much.
So right at the top of the odds board, you got Max Homa, the back-to-back champion here, looking for the three-peat. He's really stayed around 7-1 or so since odds opened up. Justin Thomas he opened up as really the second guy on the board, around 12, 14-1. It looks like nobody's betting Justin Thomas. I've seen him sink down to like 16-1 or so. I guess I would ask you, your thoughts on those two, because you've got Max Homa looking ahead a little bit. I would suspect to his his debut Ryder Cup experience here in just a couple weeks in Rome. Obviously, he's got next week off, and then the Ryder Cup's the following week. And then we all know JT's struggles have been well documented on this show as well as everywhere else. What are you expecting out of those two?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting dynamic. I'd have them both here. I mean, if you had told yourself, when did JT win the PGA? Like May 2022, like in June 2022, Max Homa was going to come to an event where, like him and Justin Thomas were the top two ranked players. And he was going to be half the odds of Justin Thomas. Half the odds, you would have just laughed, right? You would have just laughed your head off. So, I mean, my initial feel is just avoiding both of them is completely fine.
Yeah.
I think just from an odds perspective, like if I was going to go in on one of them, I don't think that like betting Justin Thomas in a macro sense right now is the worst idea in the world, because again, like in a normal situation, he would be plus 1,000 or less. I mean, him and Homa would be co-favorites here, or he'd be slightly favored. But, he's just going through this terrible run here. I just don't. I'm just not confident enough that Justin Thomas is going to come in again. Like, we're not in Florida either. I mean, again, I talked about, the West Coast, East Coast thing. Justin Thomas is a Florida guy. He's never really, I don't know if he's ever won on the West Coast for all his success. So he's certainly not had his best success out here. I would just stay away from both. The number for me for Max Homa, just, it's appealing, but like you said, there's a look ahead factor with the Ryder Cup. If I was going to bet one, I would just do Thomas. But again, like, I also think just avoiding him is fine. Waiting to see some form from him or until the Ryder Cup done is absolutely fine too.
I got to ask a question about Steven Yeager.
Oh boy.
Because DB and I talked about this guy on our show last night. And whether you're playing DFS, he's the third highest price guy, or you're looking at the odds, anywhere from 20 to 1 to 25 to 1. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, can you help us understand? Or maybe you don't understand it either, but I'm not feeling why Yeager is so loved in the betting market, and by the odds makers and by the DFS folks out there.
So I really like Steven Yeager. He's a guy I was keying in on all year. I still think, like, he's just got the type of mentality where eventually he's going to find a win on the PGA Tour. These odds hurt me. Like, I mean, it just feels like one of those situations where, like, somebody knows something. It's like they're putting him so low, so I can't bet him, and then he's going to win. Like, that's what it feels like to me. Somebody who's been backing Steven Yeager right now. So I that's why I kind of smile when you bring him up, because I mean, you're dead on. Like, I mean, him and Bo Hosler here just feel like they have no business being, but it is part of the just the field we're getting, right? So, again, Yeager, to me, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll probably try and hit him up and maybe in some live betting or something like that. I'm not going to have a huge number of outrights on the card, pre-event. I already kind of mentioned a couple of them, but I really like Yeager. I think he'll get it done. I don't think this is necessarily a poor venue. He's been really strong off the tee most of the season. It's been his putter that's come and gone for him. The irons can get a little bit loose, but off the tee, he's a strong player. So again, like, I think the setup is correct for Steven Yeager here, but yeah, like, these odds, man, I mean, man, it's tough to get on him. I think you have to take a real stance. If you're not betting any of the favorites, taking like Cam Davis and Steven Yeager, I don't think that's the worst case. He would definitely be my second target in this range after Davis, but it's pretty hard for me to make an argument to take him over Davis, who I think is just a very much like higher quality player overall. I think he's just got better win equity too. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I want to end the PGA discussion on Yeager, and I want to, before we let you go, talk a little NFL. Obviously, the big takeaway, or the headline is all Aaron Rodgers. It seems like he's going to miss the rest of the year, which is terrible. From a fantasy perspective, you cover it so well for Fantasy Life as well as DK. What are some? I don't know, like, what are some of Jeff's little nuggets, big key takeaways from week one that are going to give somebody a little bit of a nudge one way or another on a player, or maybe give somebody an edge in their home league, or maybe give somebody something to think about when it comes to roster construction and DFS? I want to give you just kind of the floor to talk about any number of guys you think really stood out or are going to be meaningful going forward or not.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, this is like the messiest week one I've ever seen.
Brutal.
And I mean, again, like, I've been doing this for a while now. I mean, like, week one is usually everyone comes in healthy. There's the odd injury, and then like we just get some nice information to go off of, and you get a chance to buy low on players. But this is just like, I mean, this week just feels like an outright disaster. I mean, Garrett Wilson is a great player, but like really hard to trust going forward. If you're a Jets fan, relying on Breece Hall, that's like the lone bright spot. But like, the Jets can be hard to trust for fantasy because they're just going to be such a defensive team. I think there are some opportunities out there in the marketplace. Like, George Pickens is a really interesting player. He's just such a fantastic wide receiver on the outside. Deontay Johnson's now hurt. I know Kenny Pickett looked terrible in the narrative around the Steelers as they just got blown out. But like, going out and getting George Pickens in the league, I don't think is the worst idea. I think that's a player who could be like a potential league winner for you. So, I mean, that's one opportunity right off the bat. And I'll say this, like, everybody hates Derek Carr, but my God, like, the Saints have a real just all-star roster of receivers, man. Like, he was second in the league in yards per attempt in week one. And that was under pressure from the Tennessee Titans. So I just look at that Saints sort of receiving core and what they were doing in week 1, like passing downfield, rarely checking down. Chris Olave, Shaheed, even Juwan Johnson potentially. That's just part of an offense where I'd be looking to grab someone potentially, like in a trade or something. It's going to be tough after week 1 because obviously a lot of those guys performed, but another good spot there for sure. And then, like, again, just, one other thing to kind of look at. I mean, I think the Seattle Seahawks, if you got a guy going up against them in fantasy, especially receiver, feel pretty good about it. So going to be a good matchup there, I think, for Amon-Ra St. Brown going on. But I mean, there's lots to talk about, going forward, how some of these teams bounce back and how some of them don't. But those are some of the situations just off the top of my head, probably worth mentioning for sure.
Love it. Love it. I was surprised too with a lot of the Rams players that are getting a lot of talk. Like I didn't even pay attention to the Rams other than I'm a big Georgia fan. So I knew that Stetson Bennett was on the team, but other than that, and then Cooper Kupp obviously would be in hurt, but this Puka Nacua guy, like, seems like he might be actually legit. I feel like he could be one that a lot of people should maybe go off of. Like, any thoughts on those players, like the running backs there?
Yeah. So, I mean, Nacua is really interesting. Like, I mean, I definitely think he's a pretty solid player. The Rams week 1 performance was definitely somewhat Seahawks induced. They were just so lost on defense. And, credit to Sean McVay and the Rams who, like they saw that the Seahawks zone was just confused and they just kept throwing Nacua in the Cooper Kupp role. And, he's a pretty solid receiver. My worry with him going forward is I should say, he's got the 49ers next week, whose defense looked absolutely phenomenal week 1. Yeah. I mean, they're hands down the best defense in week 1. So that's tough. And then Cooper Kupp is due back in a couple weeks. So like when Kupp comes back, those targets are going to dry up. But it was certainly a good, using him for DFS potentially in the next week or two is certainly something you can rely on. But I'd be a little bit hesitant. Like if I had him on a fantasy roster, I might actually look to trade him. That would probably be my hot take.
Really?
Nothing against the player. It's just, when Cooper Kupp comes back, you got to feel like the targets are going to dry up a little bit. Now, again, you can hold on to him and you can say, okay, like Cooper Kupp may not be 100% too, but just know that there's a risk that like these targets don't last forever. Right. So certainly attached to Matthew Stafford, who looked excellent in week 1. And I definitely like the fact that like if Kupp gets banged up again, you've got a lot of potential there. And then the Kieran Williams thing, I think you're spot on. Like Cam Akers looked terrible. I wouldn't be shocked if McVay started to push Kieran Williams more. So I do like him as a pickup if he can get him like on the waiver or whatever.
I was going to say for waiver wire is who would be like, obviously it's based on the rest of your team construction and what you need and who's available, but who are maybe your top 1 or 2 waiver pickups of the week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be people fighting over, certain names, but, Calvin Austin from the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, with Deontay Johnson banged up, he actually led them in targets week 1. He's a really explosive player. I don't think that the Steelers offense is anywhere near as bad as people think after week 1. They just ran into an absolute buzzsaw. And that would certainly be a name I would be looking to grab. And then Josh Kelly, again, news came out today, Austin Eckler. Looks like a high ankle sprain. It's just never good for a running back. He's probably not going to be full health like week 5 or 6.
What a great start for him too. He started so well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one I actually missed until this morning. I didn't even really realize like he was banged up. Yeah. So that's a tough one.
I missed it until right now.
I didn't know that either.
So we're not. I don't think it's definitive how what's going to happen, but it doesn't sound good. Josh Kelly, anyways, certainly a player I'd be looking to pick up. The Chargers, for all the talk preseason, they were going to throw the ball more than anyone in the entire universe. They actually dropped back below expectation and ran the ball a lot. So it looks like Josh Kelly could be in for a really big role.
Jeff, we appreciate you coming on at the Fantasy Grind on Twitter. Where else can the people go to get more Geoff Ulrich content? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, obviously writing for Fantasy Life and Matthew Berry's newsletter. So you can check us out there at fantasylife.com. Also had a betting newsletter up going now, Betting Life. So yeah, come check us out. You can just give me a follow on Twitter. I usually retweet most of the stuff, but yeah, absolutely appreciate the follow and again, checking me out.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Jeff. We'll definitely have you on again. And thanks for all the hot takes. I think the Calvin Austin take is very, very interesting. So
Yeah, he could definitely be sneaky. Yeah.
Appreciate the nuggets. And listen, everybody, thanks for sticking around. We'll wrap up the show. Next segment, we'll come back with our DraftKings cash lineup, some final thoughts on the Fortinet. So stay right here on the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. All right, so we've got 2 opportunities for you to take our money this week. We're running an NFL tiers contest and a PGA tiers contest over on Splash Sports this week and every week for the fall. And me and Pat are, you just saw it with our guest, Geoff Ulrich. We're not very good at NFL. So both contests work the same. It's a $10 2 max entry, 50 total entries. So you got to hurry up and get in. One for the NFL, one for PGA, both tiers-based contests, picking players out of each tier and putting it up against us and our listeners. It's a public contest, so hop on in. There's a link in the description. We'd love for you to try and take our money, see what you got cooking. We're going to try to get this going every single week and build it up. It's a way to, play and interact with our friends here at the Better Sports Network. So check that out.
Now back to Tour Junkies.
Damn it! Hit one good fucking iron shot.
I don't think you like that one.
On Better Sports Network.
All right, golf addicts, welcome back to the Tour Junkies Golf Show on the Better Sports Network. I want to give our friend Geoff Ulrich a big shout out and thanks for coming on last segment. Dropped a ton of knowledge, ton of hot takes there, especially on the NFL side. Had a good conversation about the Fortinet. We're going to wrap this one up. We're going to start with our Fortinet cash game lineup construction over on DraftKings, 50-50 and double up entries only. So that's all this is, cash lineup. Now, I will say, this is kind of a tough week to do a cash lineup because
It is.
nobody really feels like a sure thing. There's probably some variance here. I mean, there's variance already, so much variance in golf. And then a lot of these guys, some of these guys we haven't seen in a month or more since before the FedEx Cup playoffs. A handful of them we saw in the FedEx Cup playoffs, but not many. And, these are the guys who, for the most part, didn't have the greatest year. So there's definitely some volatility. If it were me, I would much prefer to spend my dollars in GPP and tournament contests as we normally do. And I might scale back the cash lineup a little bit.
Hey, make sure you put your cash lineup into a GPP. That's one of the tips from Just a Tip a long time ago. Maybe I don't know.
Yes, that's a throwback tip.
That was a revisit of a tip.
That's a recalled tip.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll get another tip. In a field like this with players like this. What's that?
Tony said a reusable tip.
Yes. In a field like this, it makes a lot of sense. Don't get too married to the price and the salary that you use. Leaving salary on the table is likely a very, very prudent move because the difference, we talked about it on our DFS show last night, Pat, the difference between players priced even in the 9K range and players priced, to me, where that drop-off point happens right there around the 7,400, 7,600 mark is very, very small, if any. I mean, and we talked about it with Geoff on the last event. Steven Yeager is the third highest priced guy in the field. I would easily price him 4 or 5 spots lower. And it just gets more and more magnified the more you go down the line here. So I think even leaving some cash on the table, you don't have to leave a ton, in a cash lineup could also make some sense. So where would you like to start, Pat? I'm going to give you the starting, the pole position here. I think I know who it's going to be, but
No, you know what? I think I was going to start up top, but I'm going to go low here.
Okay.
Not terribly low, but I think you like this guy, and I love this guy this week. Dylan Wu at 7,600.
I like it. All right, we're starting a little low here. I like that. Do I want to start low? Since you, let me just see what the lowest. I'll scroll up. Oh, yeah, I see one. I tell you who I really like and who surged at the end of the year. We talked about him on the show. He's on my betting card. He's at 7,700. He is a bomber. South African Garrick Higo at 7,700. Do you like Higo? I never thought I'd say I want Higo in cash, but as solid as he played at the end of last season, I think he's found something with his new instructor.
I'm with you. Well, I'm with you there. I do like him. I'm going to just go ahead and put a guy in that I would put in most any cash lineup, and that's Eric Cole at 90.
That's where I thought we were going to start. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, starting with Eric Cole for sure. At 8,600, I'm going to take him from you because I know you love him, but I like him a lot too here in cash. He almost made the betting card, just barely missed out on DV's Big Balls betting card that I dropped yesterday that is on tourjunkies.com, and that is Justin Suh. I think Geoff mentioned him a little bit. Loves the West Coast, grew up playing golf over here, played college golf out here, putts extremely well everywhere, but especially on POA. I think he's been playing overseas the last couple of weeks and playing well, so I know the game has stayed sharp for Justin Suh, and I think in this field, he could be a guy who we could see a level up in the fall and a little bit of confidence. So I'll go Justin Suh. That leaves us 2 players left, and we're right at 8,300 average salary for the 2.
Yeah, and I like Suh a lot, especially looking at his odds too, 55-1. I like him as a bet there. I'm going to go to 8,500 DB, and I'm going to go with Chez Reavie. I think Reavie is just such a solid player. When you talk about what we could see, a lot of wedges here, he just knocks down pins with his wedges. Just solid ball strikers. Geoff mentioned also, so I think we go Reavie.
Love Chez Reavie. All right, now I got a little debate. Let's make this last one. Let's collaborate on this last one. So far, I love all the picks. Okay. I like Doug Gim. We have 8,100 left. I like Gim. I like Kevin Streelman, both at 8K. Streelman's got a great record here, long-time record here. Geoff Ulrich actually mentioned both these guys, but he also likes Streelman. I know we haven't talked about him a lot. We talked about it a little bit on our show. I like Peter Quest, the kid who made the most of a few starts last spring, last summer on the PGA Tour. Good ball striker, hits it a mile. Seemingly pretty good putter too. I like Peter Quest, even though he's a little unknown. Austin Eckroat's right there at 7,800, who I already talked about in this episode. Chesson Hadley at 7,700. Sneaky good record here, as you like to say, and played well towards the end of the season. I kind of could go with any of those guys. Do you feel strongly about any of those players to round it out? Who do you think would be the highest floor guy and the safest bet?
Well, the funny thing is if I were looking at 2 guys to fill out a GPP lineup with, it would be Davis Thompson, who I like a lot this week at 7,900, and Austin Eckroat.
Okay.
The one though that I would say probably to me has the best floor would be Streelman. Like I think for a cash lineup, Streelman would be the guy. But it just depends on whether or not you want a little bit more upside. Then I think we probably would agree on somebody like an Eckroat. I'm surprised you also didn't mention Pendrith, but somebody like Eckroat might be the one that I'd probably lean towards.
Yeah, Pendrith, I'm cooling on a little bit as the weeks progressed, but I do like him. All right, so let's go Streelman. I mean, we're only leaving $100 on the table. It doesn't matter, but
that's the safest. Yeah. That's the safest play.
We got a couple old guys in there with Reavie and Streelman. And then you got Suh, Eric Cole, Garrick Higo, and Dylan Wu. I really do like this lineup. And you know what? I mean, I haven't seen a lot of ownership projections to this point. I could see this being a little bit chalky for a tournament lineup. I think Cole's going to be chalky. I think Wu's going to be chalky. Reavie and Streelman potentially. I don't know what to think about Suh yet or Higo, but I do think this could be a chalky GPP lineup, but I like it for a cash lineup. So that's the 50-50 or double up lineup. Let's keep track of that one. Make sure we're good. And I think that'll take care of it. So listen, thanks for watching the Tour Junkies Golf Show here on the Better Sports Network. See ya.